Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle Me. In my series of Freemasonry and Satanism, in pursuit of the truth. What the heck is going on in the world? That's what I asked myself. Back there in 2005, had one of them big zero birthdays, went down to Costa Rica, sat around the tiki bar in Jaco Beach. I was the only American having a Presidente beer, looking at the Pacific Ocean for the first time in my life. And people told me that we Americans, they felt sorry for us because we don't know what's going on in the world. And as we've all learned since 9/11, we Americans, most of us, don't know, didn't know, a lot of people are waking up now, what is going on in the world and why. Is everything following some kind of religious prophecy? Are there forces, malevolent, evil, demonic, cast out angels, gray aliens? What the heck is going on? With that said, I said in previous videos I was going to make another video from the Encyclopaedia Judaica. Big, thick, heavy book you can't hardly hold up very long, weighs a few pounds. And it is number 16 in the volume. Amazingly enough, I think I got all 16 of these for under $100. $3 or $4 each, and a couple of them I had to pay $16 or $20 for. And on Abe Used Books, not that I have anything to do with Abe Used Books, other than I like Abe Used Books, the shipping was free. Can you imagine? They ship these big, thick things, 2 or 3 at a time to me for free. I don't know what kind of deal the used books companies have, or at least Abe Used Books. But I'm happy to say they have some kind of deal with the shipping companies, the postal service. Because you could order a book like this for $3 and have it shipped for free. So anyways, the last book, number 16, this ought to be a very interesting conversation. And please remember, I'm doing book reviews. And I'm throwing in my commentary. It's a conversation. And I'm not trying to convince everybody to take my point of view. But there is a comment section. You can give me your 2 cents, which people do, and have assisted me with those comments of learning new materials, maybe rethinking some issues. We have to be open-minded, finding what the heck is going on in the world. What is it with Jade Helm 15 in 2015 where they were dispersing troops and equipment and all these exercises by the military, the intelligence agencies, computer software programs that eventually are designed to make decisions without human assistance? When and if there's ever this big event, Armageddon, martial law, World War III, Civil War #2 in the United States, a world revolution, we don't know. Because most of us are not privy to the plans by the elites and the secret societies. That's a lot to say. But this is series number 118. In some of my series, I've had as many as 12 2-hour videos on the Blue Lodge Handbook, Freemasonry. And a lot of them I made 6 videos, 5 videos, 4 videos. Probably about 8 videos on Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike. And a lot of my part 1s, why the videos say part 1, because I plan on getting to part 2 or whatever's next. And eventually, someday when I stop, I'll go back and fix those numbers. So if there is 1, it just says 1. And if there's 2 or 3, But anyways, when you go on YouTube search, if you want to find out how many is in a series, just put in Freemasonry and Satanism, book review 66. And it'll give you all the ones that are Freemasonry and Satanism, book review 66. Or go on my rickmiracle.com website, look over in the top left, and there's a link to a little cheat sheet of all my videos in the series numbers. But this is going to be quite amazing to read what's in the Encyclopaedia Judaica on Zionism. And lest we not forget, and I'm sure nobody will be surprised, but the Encyclopaedia Judaica is slightly tainted in favor of the poor Jews throughout the ages. It's always been everybody else's fault. No matter what country they were in, and a dead body of a child was found, which was many times, and the Jewish people locally were accused of ritual murder, and they could tell because of all the little punch holes in the child. Who else would do that? And the stab wounds on the side, I guess 5 of them, with a knife, which was supposed to reenact or simulate the 5 wounds in Jesus' side. So they were just telltale signs of these ritual murdered children, apparently in these Kabbalistic or some kind of satanic Luciferic ritual. And of course not all Jews are in on that. Is it 50-50? Is it 20% who do it and 80% who don't? Or even 5% who do it and 95% are who don't? I guess that is the question. I don't know. But I can tell you this. There is something called Messianism. They're looking, waiting for, praying for, hoping for, expecting a Messiah to come. To put them back on top of the world, to rule the world. Even saying to lead the world into the future and into peace. But the way I see it, so far the actions like 911, which evidently, according to YouTube videos and alternate websites and books I have, like Webster Tarpley's Synthetic Terror, and many others I have, had a hand in it by the Zionist, Jewish, Illuminati, secret society types from the Masonry, Rosicrucians, and many other Rainbow Coalition secret societies. As I said before, there is a serious program in place to bring about the New Age and the New World Order, and it is something to do with Messianism, a Messiah, a Messianic. And just to show that's a true thing, it says Zionism. This article is arranged according to the following outline. Now think about this. I'm going to show you the outline of this book. And how many pages in this book? This is page 1032. I'm going to write that down. That it begins. And the topic of Zionism ends. I never cease to be amazed right here how long this goes. To 1162, so 1034. Wow. More than I thought. 1162 minus 1034 is 130 pages. So if I've cut that in half to 65 pages, because apparently they count 2 columns in this book as a page. This will make sense in a minute. So 65 pages. This would constitute 4 pages if you can see the top of these. They count each column as a page. And if you see at the top, it says page there on the top, 1034, 1033. So this is 4 pages. Or if I cut it in half, it's 2 pages. So there are, if that's 2, then it's 65 pages of double pages, or 130 pages. I know this may sound like, why is Rick explaining that? Because I just want to emphasize the amount of material is almost unfathomable, and I'm sure there's much more. But if you look over in this here, this is just an index of the article. This 130 pages of material about Zionism. This is the index. I'll try to hold it so you can see it. And if you want to, you can pause it. But there's that one column in the middle of the video, the index. And over here is the continuation of the index. Just on the topic of Zion. And you don't learn anything about this in grade school, high school, college, most people. Even the local newspapers in the big cities, anywhere. They don't want you to know. So it's arranged Zionism, the topic, in the roots of Habit Zion. That means love of Zion. Background of the emergence of the movement. So there was a movement hundreds of years ago. There is a movement. The beginnings of the movement. Pinksters, auto-emancipation. So the Jews want to be emancipated. Least we not forget when the black people wanted freedom and rights in the United States, that was called emancipation. So the Jews want world emancipation. Settlement activities. They were moving immigrants, peoples, over into the Palestinians' land under the disguise of a plan. Probably the Palestinians and most people of the world didn't know about it. Actually, as probably most of the masses of people. A lot of the elites knew. Organization, settlement activities, the spiritual center, ideological evolution, the shock of the 1880s, political Zionism. So I guess a lot of people in the world became aware of political Zionism and the established world congresses in many countries all over the world. 1880s. Way before World War I in 1914 to 1917. And after 1917, World War I, Russia had been weakened, so some guerrilla warfare types, Bolshevik Jewish types, revolutionary military types from New York and other parts of the world, were sponsored, trained, and sent into Russia, abducted the family, assassinated the family, took over Russia, even with the controls of the support from armies like in the United States, policing, railroad stations, etc. A lot of people don't know this stuff. And anyways, it's said, according to admitted articles in Jewish newspapers, etc., 25 million non-Jews were killed, purged, starved to death, etc. And apparently over the 10 to 15 year period or longer, up to or maybe more than 100 million non-Jews were purged, murdered, starved to death, etc. And the Christian churches were destroyed, but not the Jewish temples. Days after World War I. But in 1880, years before World War I, so it makes you wonder, it doesn't make me wonder, but those poor Germans didn't stand a chance. World War I was inevitable. World War II was inevitable. And apparently, according to prophecy by Albert Pike, the leading Freemason, he wrote a letter to his friend Mazzini in Italy back in the 1880s, describing the 3 world wars that would have to be fought, where they would be fought, why they would be fought, to bring about this new world order. So here I'm reading this, these outlines, these long columns I just showed in this video, and these topics: the shock of the 1880s, political Zionism, culture and synthetic Zionism, legion and self-defense, post-war consensus and differentiation, between pogroms and Holocaust. And by the way, besides the so-called Holocaust of World War II, there were periods of time when, in the 1920s, before World War II, when they said they had the Holocaust, and before the 1920s, the 1910s or whatever, there were major articles published in papers in New York, around the world, about Holocaust happening and the threat of imminent death to 6 million Jews before World War I. And of course, since World War II, I said before World War II, but after World War II, they kept talking about the 6 million Jews who died. So they've been using that number for 100 years, some kind of religious prophecy. You can go on YouTube or alternate websites or look at my videos or buy books and get this Encyclopaedia Judaica. And there are 2 volumes. I recommend the one that was published in Israel, the Keter edition, only because it's the one I have. I'm sure the Macmillan published in New York is probably just as good, but they were both released in 1972. And then they had edition 73, 74, 75. So it really doesn't matter that you have the 16 of these all in the same year. There's enough of the important information that I'm finding probably in each one. Other than the newer they get, it seems the more the information is censored. They took out information they don't want us to know. And when you read the Encyclopaedia Judaica, just remember it's tainted, and they always excuse anything the Jews ever do all over the world for the last couple hundred years as being the other guy's fault. Even when they were expelled from Britain, Spain, and Russia, and had trouble in Germany and many other places, and a lot of times the turmoil or the decisions hit an apex, hit the ceiling, would be because of ritual child murder in part of their satanic rituals. Blood libels, they call them. And I've been going over this stuff, and I'm going to dig deeper into it so that I can understand this Jewish Kabbalistic culture historically and why they do these things. Is it that they are into some kind of Kabbalistic Satanism, Luciferian religion, worshiping and paying tribute to, sacrificing these young people to some kind of demonic spiritual being, some kind of God? I want to know. Is it wrong to want to know this stuff? Would that make me what they call an anti-Semite? To want to know why they were expelled from Britain, why they were expelled from Spain, why they were having such serious troubles in a vast half of a continent like Russia, and so many other countries. Why even in the United States, in my past video on this topic, were all the Jews expelled from the Tennessee territories by a major general of the United States? Why? What was going on? What caused a general for the United States to say that all of the Jews in the territory have to leave right now or be arrested. Cause for the pause. Why? And anyways, when you look at this index, obviously there's a plan, and the rest of us are not supposed to know about it. Well, if I have my way, we're going to know about it. At least what it says here. Realizing this material is tainted. And I had an analogy to a friend of mine because she said, I don't understand. Why? And I'm saying, what if you had a son or a daughter in college, and that child was in a drunken party and got expelled from that college? And so you got him in another college, and they expelled him. And you got him in another college, and they expelled him. And you got him in another college, and they expelled him. And you got him in another college, and they expelled him. Would you say that all the colleges are wrong and that your child was right? Or would you say to your child, listen up, you need to change your ways if you're going to stay in any one of these colleges? That's my metaphor, analogy, to the problems that the Jews had wherever they went in all these countries. Apparently there are videos on YouTube where they were expelled or put under serious restrictions on their properties, activities they could engage in 92 different countries over 2,000 years. Why? Is there deity, and of course not all Jews, but the ones into the Kabbalistic or world domination are having this ego characteristic about themselves that they think that they're the aristocrats of the world. What's this got to do with the Illuminati and Rothschilds? Well, it's in this material. And so much more. So let me just try to finish reading the index before I keep rambling on. Post-war consensus differentiation between pogroms and the Holocaust, the pogroms in Russia. Relations to the Arabs. Oh my God, the Arabs have suffered enough, I think. After the Holocaust, catastrophic Zionism revived. Zionism in the State of Israel. Tensions in the United States and the USSR, so the Zionist Jewish people in general, had problems in the United States, even had congressional hearings in the United States in the 1920s, plus or minus, about something called the Jewish problem. The same thing that Henry Ford, the automaker, wrote all those articles in his newspaper, the Dearborn Independent, that he purchased. An automaker, a guy probably busy enough that he doesn't have to pay attention to this. But in those articles, now in 4 volumes of books, I've shown them, the Dearborn Independent, look it up, Henry Ford. You can get used books and get all 4 volumes, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And read about the separate essays or articles, even them of these Jewish people taking over the movie theaters and the liquor establishments and creating stuff in Hollywood and so much more. So they accuse Henry Ford of being an anti-Semite, when apparently you really can't be an anti-Semite because most of the Jews today apparently don't seem to be Hebrew, but from Khazars, who adopted the religion a couple hundred years ago, a few hundred years ago, and were pretty much basically known to be very barbaric, ruthless people throughout history. Talking about throwing gas in the fire to flame it up, why don't you just get the Khazarians to be Jewish, who want to rule the world? Even in Revelation 9 in the Bible, you can look this up. It says in there, this is God's words, not mine. I know who you are, Jews who call yourselves Jews, but you are not. It's in the Bible. Revelation 9. Simple to go look up and read it. Alright, let's try to get back to these columns of this index. Ideological problems in Israel. Non-Zionism and anti-Zionist trends. Autonomist and Yiddishness. So the Yiddish Jews were the ones who were coming from the Khazaria area, Poland, Russia, etc. Religious and secular anti-nationalism, territorialism and agricultural settlements, Soviet Jewish culture, Zionist policy, the Herschel period, the transition period, the Young Turks, the Arab problem, the struggle for the future, war, words and deeds, war and Holocaust, years of decision. So that's the one column. Let's start the second one. The United Nations investigates the UN decisions, Zionist organization, history, structure, government bodies, the Zionist Congress, the General Council, the Executive, the President, the judicial organs, the Comptroller. Oh my. Zionist organization and the Jewish Agency, Zionist organization and the State of Israel. In Australia and New Zealand, in Austria, Bulgaria, Canada, in Czechoslovakia, in France, in Germany, in Great Britain, in Holland, in Hungary, in Italy, in Latin America, in North Africa, in Asian countries, in Poland, in Romania, in Russia, in South Africa, in the United States, in Yugoslavia. Zionist utopias. That's what it says here. Christian Zionism. Introduction to Zionist bibliography. So Zionist utopia. I did do that one video on the book, Professor Hegger, A Jewish Utopia. Go watch that video. Bloody Zion, I made that one there. And then we got the Christian Zionism. Apparently the traders and cohorts in the United States who are selling out the United States. And even the last year of President Obama's presidency, his last year in office, it was a press release that in that year was the most money in any 1 year of aid sent to Israel. And when I first began this investigation back in 2005, 6, and 7, there was a headlined press release articles going around. You can find it. I can find it. That during 1947, when the world, I guess, illegally annexed Palestinians' land and recognized the state of Israel, small little portion. Now, of course, the Palestinians only have a small little portion. So when we read this, we're going to see the plan. It's all going to be very clear. But anyways, from 47 to like 62, $90 billion was given to Israel for aid. Okay, so what, right? From 47 to 62, 63. But the whole world during that period did not get $90 billion. So, like Prime Minister Sharon of Israel said once in a heated argument in his Congress, when some of his other politicians said, we can't keep doing this to the Palestinians' land. Taking their land, taking their cities, bulldozing their properties, killing them, because the United States will intervene. And Prime Minister Sharon of Israel exclaimed in a shouting voice, don't worry about the USA, we control the USA. Remember these things when I read what I'm going to read. And there are a lot of good Jewish people here in the United States. And it would behoove them, or I would prefer it, if they would go get the Encyclopaedia Judaica, realize that it's biased, they see what's going on, and they make some videos like this, like many of the books I have by Jewish people that I've gone over. PhD Canadian author in Canada, Henry Mackau, who wrote the book Illuminati, the Cult That Hijacked the World. So the Illuminati would be a Kabbalistic organization of these elitist Jewish, the Rothschild Rockefellers, like Fritz Springmeier's books, The Bloodline of the Illuminati. And of course, now this topic that's popular out there is these reptilian beings. Remember, it was a snake in the Garden of Eden who beguiled and deceived Adam and Eve. So we don't actually believe it was a little garden snake or a rattlesnake. It was a serpent being, and there seems to be plenty of evidence, including statues and images in stone all over the world, tying all this stuff into God and the Bible. So these people who think they're the aristocrats of the world apparently are the reptilians of the world. Now they're trying to say they're the people who came here from planet Nibiru and created mankind to be their worker slaves to mine for gold, etc. How many morons, and I say that sincerely, out there are going to believe that they were made to be a slave for certain peoples? Will people fall for it? If they do fall for it, aren't they a moron to enslave themselves and their children for eternity, maybe? People need to wake up. There's something very wrong, even with what's going on in Syria right now. They're continuing to bomb and destroy buildings, and it's taken them a while, many years now. They expected it to fall like Iraq or Egypt or Libya. Look what they did to the Libyan Gaddafi, whatever his name was, the president. Dragged him through the street and did some horrific things to him I prefer not to say. And look what they did to the Ukraine, overthrowing that country, and days later, you can look this up, I don't know, 30 tons or something like that of gold were shipped to New York or taken out of the country. But the Ukrainian people never saw that coming. So much more. But there's only so many minutes in an hour, hours in a day, and days in the week. So I may as well get moving on and reading from this book. Alright, where did I leave off? We're talking about the word Zionism, Zion, which basically means Jerusalem. And the first temple was destroyed about 600 years before Jesus was born. That's 2,600 years ago. And ever since then, the Jewish people have yearned for a homeland. Thus, Zion is found in Psalms in the Bible by the rivers of Babylon. So Babylon would be in Iraq. We know why that was taken down. We know why 9/11 was planned and executed. World War I, World War II, I've gone over this in previous videos. It is all about bringing about Zionism, ruling the world from Jerusalem. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we weep, when we remembered Zion. So these people are homesick from their homeland and been dispersed all over the world. They refuse to assimilate. They've had problems wherever they went. And of course, the biggest question is, why were they exiled in the first place? Was this the first time they were exiled? And the answers are no and no. And the last time they were exiled, there are probably 92 countries that exiled them or caused serious restrictions on their behavior, activities, over 2,000 years. And now they have nukes. Israel. Something called a Samson option. If the world tries to stop them, they're going to release the nukes and take down the world's cities in a flaming inferno. That reminds me of that Eurovision, like the American Idol program we have in the United States. In 2014, the winner was Conchita Wurst. Wurst is a sausage, Conchita is a female part. And this person, male or female, I don't know, had the head like Jesus with long hair and a beard and a body in a silky woman's dress. Androgynous, which is what the devil is, androgynous. Bafflant, whatever. Singing the song Phoenix Rising, which has the words, "You can't stop us." So do you think they're telling us that we can't stop them? But when I read from this Encyclopaedia Judaica, they've gone through a lot of effort Imagine building a whole city and you're down to the last parking lot and the whole city's done and nobody's moved into it yet. I think in China they've done that. Would you just abandon the whole project when you're down to the last city block or building? Of course not. Well, they've come so far and they've taken over the world and they own most of the money and control natural resources and everything. It's just a matter of pulling the trigger, creating some world event, or World War III or something, or a nuclear weapon in some harbor, martial law, some kind of plagues, some kind of destruction. Then the presidents will have to announce martial law. People will have to be microchipped. All the prophecy will be fulfilled. And the non-Jews will have enslaved all of the Jews will have enslaved all the non-Jews, the Gentiles, or Goy and Goyim as they call us, cattle. That's a lot to say, I know. When we remembered Zion in the prayer, and let our eyes behold thy return in mercy to Zion. In the poem Zion, wilt thou not ask if peace be with thy captives, that seek thy peace, that are the remnant of the flocks, and frequently elsewhere in religious and secular literature. The modern term Zionism first appeared at the end of the 19th century, at 1880, denoting the movement whose goal was the return of the Jewish people to Ezra Israel. So way before World War I and World War II. This was planned. In 1880-something, Albert Pike, the leader of the Freemasons in the United States, southern jurisdiction, said there would be 3 world wars to bring about the New World Order. All this is tied together. I feel so sad for all the Arabs. Well, I feel sad for Americans and other world citizens, Europeans, all those wars and deaths, chaos and anarchy and suffering. But the people in the Middle East have been facing the brunt of that since 9/11 and before. George Bush Sr. went in there and attacked Iraq. And it's been relentless for those people. And now they're even causing disharmony and economic destruction and social destruction all over the world, in Sweden and Germany and America and everywhere else. We're in the middle of the night. They're shipping these Arabs who are not happy, and I wonder if a bunch of these Arabs are really Arabs or just some kind of staged masses of amounts of people to bring about the end of our country, like in the 1920s and 10s, when they were shipping maybe millions of these Yiddish Jews to the United States and the rest of the world, Argentina, everywhere. And there was a lot of turmoil caused. These people were arrogant, nasty people, according to Henry Ford and other people. They acted like they owned the place, that they knew something nobody else knew. They were going to fulfill their Messianic thing. Their God was going to come and put them in leadership position to rule over the rest of us. And those who would not swear allegiance, maybe to Lucifer, would be beheaded, imprisoned, and killed. Like the Hunger Games movie. Back to the book. It was coined by Nathan Brimbaum in his journal, Stutzen Emancipation, something in German. April 1890. I'm going to pay attention to these dates when I say them. That's how long this has been going on. This is a plan. Brimbaum himself explained the term in a letter November 6, 1891, as the establishment of an organization of the National Political Zionist Party. So now you know who these people are. They're not an ethnic group, a race of people. They're not a religion like Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or Islam. It's the National Political Zionist Party. While they want the rest of us to submit ourselves, yearn for, and people are doing it, a lot of liberals in these protests, for globalization. Don't build that fence, Mr. Trump. Reunite the world. We don't want to be nationalists. We want to be globalists. It's all a deception. So anyways, the Zionists have the National Political Zionist Party, while they want the rest of us to be good global citizens. And if I want to interpret that, that means obedient slaves. And how are you going to be an obedient slave? How are they going to watch all of us? They're going to have to monitor, like they're doing, and microchip everybody. It'll be much more severe. If you don't go to work, you'll probably be arrested. You won't be able to marry who you want to. Go move to whatever state or city you want to. You won't be able to accumulate wealth. You won't be free. You'll be a slave. That's what it seems like. That's what's said. Okay, in juxtaposition to the politically oriented party that existed until now. So they had the National Political Zionist Party. The extent to which the New World, the extent to which the New Word filled a need in the youth movement. So they've been using the youth movement, even of the Jewish people, like they're using the youth movements now here in the United States to bring about this progressive, liberal, transgender, crazy type of world where even kids get little games where they get to have warriors that fight each other and chop off their heads and all kinds of horrific things. Think about Pokemon. Go to this big electronics store, even the big mart stores, and go look at the children's section, the video games and and other stuff. It's right out of a horror movie. But people are subjecting to their kids. Or sit down with your kids and watch regular cartoons and see what those cartoon characters actually say. You might wind up throwing the TV out the window. Saying, oh my God, what are they telling my kid? So the youth movement can be gauged from the plethora of subtitles in Substation Emancipation, German word again, I think, from its first appearance until May 18, 1893 issue, when the definition Organ de Zionism, the organ of the Zionist, was adopted. However, despite the precise meaning which Brimberg intended to convey it, the term Zionism and Habit Zion, that's love Zion, were still used interchangeably, and it was only gradually that the meaning of political Zionism, as distinguished from its practical, almost wholly philanthropic aspect, gained acceptance. This happened finally and unequivocally with the appearance of Herschel, Theodore Herschel, in his book, The State of Israel. All right, moving on. Herschel, Theodore Herschel, who knew nothing of semantic developments of the word Zionism, first used it to denote philanthropic supporting small-scale settlement. So rich people supporting some small-scale settlements. It was only when preparations for the first Zionist Congress. So remember, these people didn't only have a country, but they had already formed their Congress. Had commenced, and when at the last moment two of the speakers at the Congress, Hirsch Hilgensheimer and Willy Bambas, leading members of the Ursa Society, withdrew their participation due to Herschel's explicit political orientation, that Herschel had began to stress the importance of Zionist Congress to be distinguished from the Habat Zion, love of Zion movement. The Basel program adopted at the first Zionist Congress explicitly endorsed Herschel's political conception of Zionism. From then on, Zionist history was viewed as being divided into two epochs: Habat Zion, love of Zion, and political Zion. This did not, however, put an end to the prolonged struggles between the two concepts inside the Zionist movement. Between the political and practical Zionists, each of them regarded their approach to the rationalization of the Zionist aim as a genuine meaning of the term Zionism. So there's more here. Unless it is based on practical settlement in Israel. They called Israel Israel. And settlement alone could not develop into desirable proportions without the support of the political efforts. And there's a headline on this next essay, Forerunners. On the threshold of modern times, as far as ethnic and historical consciousness is concerned, the Jews were better prepared for the national movement than any other ethnic group in Europe. Before this consciousness could become an ingredient of modern nationalism, it first had to undergo certain transformations. By the same token, however, all peoples had to undergo important changes in their attitudes before they could be caught up in a national movement. They had to evaluate the attributes of their ethnic group to ultimate values. Jewish society achieved its nationalist transformation with the appearance of a modern idea, later called Zionism, which purged, so to speak, Jewish messianic belief of its miraculous ecological elements, religious elements, and retained only its political, social, and some of its spiritual objectives. So there was some infighting in the different Jewish camps towards the political and spiritual Zionism. Even in this phase of development, however, Zionism leaned heavily on the old messianism, waiting for some God Messiah to come save them and lead them along to rule the world, and derive from it much of its ideological and even more its emotional appeal. See messianic movements. So I'm going to have to look up messianic movements in these Encyclopaedia Judaicas. Yet all this was accomplished only at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. So about 1880, 1890, 1900, 1910. Way before World War I and World War II. The Germans never seen this coming. There were a lot of Jewish people in Germany in powerful positions, and they didn't see this coming, and they didn't want it to come. But when the New York Zionist Jewish programs told them what to do in World War I, they did do what they were told what to do in World War I and betrayed the German people. Part of what was called the Balfour Agreement. Germany was winning the war. England was losing. It was all about empires, the German Empire, the England United Kingdom Empire. And Germany was prospering. And I would suspect it had something to do with the large amount of Jews in Germany who had fled Russia and had found safe refuge, a safe home. But later on, and I've made a video about this. Thus, in spite of the fact that the Jews preceded other nations in processing the potentialities of nationalism, so the potentialities of nationalism is what Israel's all about now, while they're trying to force this new age and new world order, globalization on the rest of us. They want to make all countries interdependent upon the others. Actually, what I think they want to do once they take over the world, if the people want to eat, they're going to tell them they have to work harder. They have to compete. Otherwise, the crops and the jobs and the manufacturing will go to another country. So they need to get less wages and work harder and not disturb the environment. Don't go into the woods. Which they, under the biodiversity programs, I've gone over this. It looks like they plan on fencing off over 50% of America. And of course it'll lead to even more property annexed and fenced off. They want the people to be slaves. The ones they allow to live, by the way. They plan on a huge depopulation event. According to the Georgia USA Guidestones, go look them up. And many documents and books I have. A lot of people I was watching Alex Jones He was talking about the evidence. They're now even working with cemetery owners, planning for a big deluge of dead bodies. What to do with them all? Oh my. Some kind of plague, maybe? Anyways, it all has something to do with what I'm reading about, in my opinion. The development of the Jewish national movement in its Zionist form lagged behind that of the most European nations. The shattering of the traditional existence of European Jewry as separate religious ethnic entities, somehow connected with the surrounding estate structures, pre-nationalist society, was followed by a transitional period that partly preceded and partly coincided with that of the forerunner of Zionism. This period was basically rationalistic, aiming principally at the integration of the Jews in a new, rapidly changing European society. So way before World War I and World War II, Jews in a new, rapidly changing European society. So there were people who were in control of the money, the Rothschilds, the banksters, and they could steer which way this economic ship was going. Who got the money? Who would control the factories? And apparently they were steering it towards the Jewish people. And the other non-Jewish people all over Europe and the United States probably still don't recognize what happened then and what's happening now. But it simultaneously evoked certain features, particularly pronounced in the Hashgalah period, which was later absorbed into the stream of Zionist ideology. Here it says, one of them was the revitalization and modernization of the Hebrew language, which eventually culminated in the historical achievement of Elijah ben Yehuda. Another, the striving for economic productivization. An additional trait of this period was the emergence of the politically minded Jewish leader who appraised the world around him realistically in the light of a defined political activity. One cannot, however, properly speak of forerunners of Zionism, such as Rabbi Judah, Alakai, Rabbi Zevi Hirsch, Kalesher, Chaim, Lorjai, Rabbi Elijah, Guttmacher, Moses, Hess, and others before the end of the 1850s or the beginning of the 1860s. So just consider that. These people have been busy worldwide. Only then could they succeed in uniting the widely scattered adherents of their idea through mutual consent. So they had to convince all the other Jews of this all over the world. The factor common to all, their faith that the future existence of the Jewish nation is conditioned by its return to the historical homeland, become a basis of social unity. The difference between the earlier period and the 1860s is not difficult to explain. The 1860s saw the completion of emancipation. In most West European countries, where it was not yet wholly accomplished, it was thought to be just around the corner. So this was in the 1860s. 150 more years ago. As long as the struggle for political equality of the Jews was going on, the idea of Jewish nationalism could not be tolerated. For the argument that the Jews are a separate national entity was one of the main weapons of the Gentile. And again, I remind myself that I am reading the Encyclopaedia Judaica, so it's never going to be their fault for not wanting to assimilate. The main weapon of the Gentile. Enemies of emancipation. So apparently all we non-Jews don't ever want to have these Jews freed, which I never heard of such a thing in my whole life. I have no doubt back then that the Christian church was promoting its dominance out of Rome. And the Mohammedanism, the Arabs, Islam, they were promoting their religion. And these Jewish people had been dispersed all over the world hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. Not by me, not by anybody watching this video. But apparently, through all these thousands of years, this fever to return to their golden age, maybe, when they had their own kingdom. And why was their kingdom destroyed? Why were they dispersed all over the world? What kind of problems were going on? Is that an important question? What is Kabbalistic culture? Why were many Kabbalists accused of sorcery? What is magic? What is witchcraft? What is it to do to communicate with demons? Even King Solomon, this is common knowledge, had a 6-pointed star on his magic ring that he could call forth demons, and apparently that's where he got his power. Of course, people would tell you, oh, you don't believe in that hocus-pocus stuff. Don't look at what they say, look at what they do. 911 was a ritual. So many more. From the 1860s on, when the emancipation seemed all but completed, the idea of Jewish nationalism could be propagated as the next phase. So the more the Jewish people gained more acceptance and freedoms in all the countries they moved to, and brought with them their aggressive tendencies to want to control and own everything, which they were good at. Even Jesus overturned the money changers' tables. And then when they did get in these positions and did whatever they were doing, they usually angered the host country that had allowed them to come in and welcomed them. Those countries never saw it coming. And again, why would the general for the Tennessee territories during the Civil War exile all the Jews from those territories? What was happening? I'd like to look into that some more. And I have plenty of books on these topics, and I will be looking into these things. I'm only seeking the truth. Like I said, there's probably a lot of Jewish people out there who know more than I do, and it'd be nice if they would step up and say, hey, you know, there is this battle in the Jewish camp. There are the Jews who worship God, believe in family values, want to live in peace. But then there's these other Jews that want to rule everything, be part of the aristocracy, elites of the world. They thrive on it. And I'm certainly not going to say there's not a lot of other people in high places in Italy and England and Germany, Austria, all over the world, in these castles and elite families who haven't also had the propensity and desire to be the kings and queens and barons of the world. Just makes me wonder. And they claim their lineages, their descendants, or they are descendants of some kind of divine royalty, even a serpent-like bloodline. So could this just be that these serpent bloodlines are fighting each other, and there's just one bloodline that seems to have the Jewish people under its control, and another bloodline that has all the Europeans under their control, and a bloodline that has the Chinese people under their control? I'm speculating. Could it be all this Luciferic, satanic, reptilian entities all along, even before the Great Flood, all those monuments all over the world? I wonder. But I'm just wondering now about what's going on with this New Age and New World Order controlling the United Nations, and Israel be given so much of American money to continue to prop it up, even giving it nuclear weapons, or they conspired and stole the technologies, bribed some of the engineers and people in our government. How did they get them? And why does it look like they want to take out Iran next after they finish off Syria? So in the long run, when the world wakes up to the truth, do they fear Iran to be a threat they don't want to have to deal with. Alright, Jewish nationalism could be propagated as the next phase. Kircher even suggested that Jewish nationalism was the natural continuation of the emancipation itself. So you got them, the Jews, worldwide emancipated. They now have their own country via World War I, World War II, and much more, and 9/11. They now have nuclear weapons. So for a couple hundred years, they've been plowing forward for this thing. And they're waiting on this Messiah, this kind of God to come and help them to rule the world. Some descendant of King David. Doesn't sound like it'll look too good for the rest of us. If we believe some of the books I've gone over, the books that I'm going to go over. The old Messianic idea, however, did not disappear completely under the impact of rationalism. It remained alive in the Jewish masses. As late as 1840, there was a widespread rumor in the Balkans and in Eastern Europe that the Messianic year, 1840, which was destined to bring about the great turning point in Jewish history, had arrived. So they believed their God had arrived. Many held this belief genuinely and were waiting in a state of mental agitation. For one of these believers, Rabbi Judah Alaki, 1798 to 1878, his messianic expectations became a point of departure for the transition from the traditional, miraculous messianism to a realistic one. So they really, again, remember when I made that one video on Sabbatai Zivai out of the Encyclopaedia Judaica? In 1666, he proclaimed himself God, the Messiah who was prophesied to come. And people got hooked up on the fever. It was the worldwide in the world that existed back then. This change of conception was caused by the coincidence of the messianic expectations with the rescue of the Jewish community in Damascus. The rescue of the Jewish community in Damascus. Isn't Damascus in Syria right now? Isn't Syria under siege right now? All of Syria minus Damascus has probably fallen. It's prophesied that when Damascus falls, that's the beginning of Armageddon. Just saying, back then, the Jewish community, the rescue of the Jewish community in Damascus, which had been charged with, here we go. I hate to keep saying things and not having more proof so people will believe me. But the people in the Jewish community in Damascus had been charged with ritual murder by two leading figures of French and English Jewry, Adolphe Crimenex and Sir Moses Montefiore, as the miraculous events of the redemption failed to appear. So I'm thinking to myself, they can't be sacrificing people, ritual murder, to try to get some kind of redemption or to bring about some kind of Messiah. Okay, as the miraculous events of the redemption failed to appear, Alaki inferred that the rescue of this one community was a model for the messianic procedure. So they were accused of ritual murder, they were looking for redemption, and this rabbi says the rescue of this one community that was being accused of ritual murder was the model for the messianic procedure. Makes one wonder what kind of religion are they in, and I suppose if they're into Kabbalah, which is witchcraft, which was accused of sorcery, and even witches have to sacrifice humans in their ceremonies. This is a little eye-opening, maybe? The future stages of redemption were to be achieved through similar activities of outstanding Jews. Alakia was the undistinguished preacher of the Little Shepherdetta community in Semlin near Belgrade. However, after he became convinced that the era of the Messiah had arrived, and that the redemption would have to be achieved by human action, he felt compelled to convey this message to his fellow Jews. In the remaining 37 years of his life, not only did Al-Kahai publish numerous pamphlets, so they were publishing a lot of propaganda, and articles to spread his ideas, but he traveled on two occasions to Western Europe and later settled in Urja, Israel. So this guy finally made it to Israel in order to convince Jews and non-Jews of the truth of his mission. He tried to induce people to join an organized resettlement of Jewry, and in some part thereof, in their homeland, and to equip themselves with the attributes of the modern nation. Although Al-Kahai began as a preacher imbued with the traditional and especially Kabbalistic sources, he gradually acquired elements of a modern national conception. Again, this is the Encyclopaedia Judaica. Obviously, this book would be tainted towards describing the Jewish people and leaders as the good guys with good intentions and everybody else is bad guys with bad intentions. I wouldn't expect anything else from a Encyclopaedia Judaica. He propagated the idea of Jewish national unity through an overall organization of world Jewry with modernized Hebrew as a common language. Religion would also play a part in the new national life, but as the controversial between Orthodoxy and Reform grew, so there was a divide in the community of Jewish people, as I've been saying. And the controversy, right here it says, between Orthodoxy and Reformed Jewry grew. Page 1034 on the bottom. Al-Kahai sought a remedy to this idea of national unity. Interestingly enough, here in the United States, with the recent election for president, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, we have seen the bitterness between the Democrats and the Republicans. I know, and have been ever since the Bush years, George Bush Jr. and his craziness, 9/11, and his arrogant attitude. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat, I'm a registered independent. But I would say to all Republicans out there and all Democrats, if you continue this fight, and it's 50% of the people on both sides here, they plan on bringing about Civil War number 2, and a lot of people will be destroyed, families, businesses, the country. And certain peoples, maybe Fritz Springmeier's bloodlines of the Illuminati, the elites, the people we're talking about, will take control of the world, will have weakened everybody. And that's called the Hegelian dialectic. The dialectic is to divide two opposing forces and have them destroy each other, while the puppet master controls the whole thing, controls both sides. So it might just behoove the Democratic and Republican parties to recognize that they're being used, but I think the politicians themselves know this, and the people don't know is the problem. So if all the people just went with one party or the other, but if they followed the Democratic leadership, who are bought and paid for politicians, that's going to get us nowhere. We need to get new politicians across the board. I mean, the mere fact that we've got Donald Trump up there is a bit bizarre, whose children clearly have a conflict of interest. The daughter married a wealthy Jewish real estate magnate from New Jersey. The son married a famous, wealthy Jewish woman, and they apparently are part of the Jewish religion. And if you're Jewish, you have obligation to a country that didn't exist, but your first allegiance is to Israel, your homeland. And even Chernoff, the Homeland Security leader, and many others were Israeli citizens. Why are they putting Israeli citizens in charge of the USA? Why were they sending many American sheriffs and police chiefs to Israel for training so they could treat us like they treat Palestinian prisoners? Did you know that? All right, moving on. Reading the book instead of rambling on. Zevi Hirsch Kessler, 1795 to 1874, developed his ideas on similar lines. So now this goes back more than a couple hundred years. The German rabbinic scholar of Polish origin, he refused to accept any position in communal life. The great experience of his youth was the emancipation of the Jews in France and in the German countries at the time of Napoleon. He explained these events in terms derived from Jewish tradition. The emancipation, or even more, the ascendance of Jewish individuals. Example, the Rothschilds, here we go, to unheard of economic and political influence, appeared to him to be the fulfillment of the old prophecy of liberation which, according to Jewish tradition, was to terminate the exile. So here we're talking about a prophecy, some kind of religious prophecy, that all of this was going to happen. So it says in the Encyclopaedia Judaica, page 1035. It is true that the prophecy was not yet realized, for it entailed the ingathering of the Jews to their homeland. So this is happening before our very eyes for the last couple hundred years, and they pulled off these world wars, they pulled off 9/11, they pulled off so much more, overthrown countries, assassinated presidents, acquired resources all over the world, manufacturing the less than 1%, 1% of 1%, or 400 families own all the huge companies, polluting the heck out of our rivers and our lands, planning some Project Blue Beam or some kind of alien invasion to fool us all, to bring about the New Age and the New World Order. It's been happening right before our eyes. Nobody wants to pay attention. Some people are paying attention. They wrote these books and all the other books I have. Therefore, as early as 1836, Kessler appealed to Meyer Aschel Rothschilds to buy from Muhammad Ali the whole of Urja, Israel. So back in 1836, they were buying land in Palestinian country, or at least Jerusalem or the temple area. So this is all prophecy. This is all some kind of religion. It involves King Solomon's temple. King Solomon had a magic ring to call forth demons. There was all kinds of other craziness going on, sacrificing humans, it appears. And they want all that back. It's part of the program. So the motivation for doing this New Age and New World Order appears to be satanic, Luciferic, Ra, Osiris, Isis, something. Something much deeper than most of us understand. And according to the Encyclopaedia Judaica, the videos I made, the Kabbalistic religion was part of the Jewish culture all along. And Kabbalists were often accused of sorcery, and apparently part of the problems were the ritual murders. I mean, what does it really take to excite people and get people mad to grab their pitchforks and start running somebody out of town? I guess child ritual murder would do it. So they were back in 1836. Kretschler appealed to Rothschilds to buy land in Israel, or at least Jerusalem, or the temple area. And this is the problem they're having now, getting a hold of the rest of the temple area from the Muslims, Islamic Palestinians, and they got the whole world fooled. that these people are evil, that they flew over here in planes and did 911. So as to initiate the miraculous redemption. So they're looking for a miraculous redemption. And remember, these people back then were accused of having Jesus crucified in the Christian biblical text, having him arrested, and Pontius Pilate, the Roman leader, said, I don't want to crucify the Son of God. I don't want that on my head. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said. And the Jewish people in the crowd said, let it be on our heads and our children's heads. So anyways, they need to initiate the miraculous redemption from below. That's what it says here. I was kind of wondering what that means. A miraculous redemption from below. Just because I like people to believe me what I'm saying here. You can see the highlighted portion I highlighted and underlined really dark. So the miraculous redemption from below. Would that be Hades? And later he addressed the same request to Moses Montefiore. By interpreting the events of emancipation in terms of messianism, Ketchler simultaneously transformed these very terms. Well, people can believe what they want, but this is what it says here. And I'm sure it's sugar-coated here. There's some things they don't say about the Kabbalistic, the Kabbalah culture, that it's like witchcraft, occult. We've gone over witchcraft in the Encyclopaedia on the Occult. We'll go over that stuff some more, and that's why I go over it. I just want me, and anybody who wants to watch my videos and research, to have some kind of idea of what we are dealing with. Apparently it has something to do with communicating with beings on the other side of the veil, another firmament, another dimension, I don't know, dead people, or cast out angels, peoples that are in battle with our God's heaven. And apparently these entities, creatures, hate humanity. And apparently there are some people humans who have aligned themselves with these non-human entities that hate humanity. So we've got some enemies among us. And of course these entities would consider God-fearing, Jesus-believing people to be their enemy. They don't run around going, oh my, I'm wrong. I should change my ways. That's not what they're doing. They're rationalizing. What they're doing is serving their God. They believe they're the chosen ones. And it's their responsibility and duty to be the chosen ones. And anybody who doesn't go along should be beheaded. And their property should be confiscated regardless. They don't deserve to have anything. They're animals. That's what they think about us. And don't say it's not true. I've printed out many pages from the Jerusalem Post newspaper, the leading newspaper in Israel, and the English edition, where the Jewish people in their comments section say nasty thing about the goy and goyim, which means animals. They laugh in some of their comments that we Christians are buying gifts at Christmas time from a Jewish Messiah, from their Jewish factories. They've got this sick sense of humor, some of these people. Anyways, thus his interpretation of the emancipation led to the demand of the ingathering of at least some part of the Jewry in Urja, Israel. And again, I'm reminding myself, here in the United States, 50% of millions of Jews, I don't know. But they don't know nothing about this. If they did, they would be outraged also. There are many authors I've read, books I have behind me, books I have over on that shelf, books I've gone over, written by Jewish people who are exposing the ones who turned from God, who turned towards Luciferianism. They didn't like the Ten Commandments. They wanted to be liberal and progressive and do as thou wilt, according to Aleister Crowley. And apparently some of the things they want to do is, to us, people, it's pretty nasty. These people are in control of the porn industry, the Hollywood movie industry, and many others. There's books written about this. In order to place these theories in the correct perspective, one must bear in mind the underlying motives of their promoters. These theories of redemption were derived from the reinterpretation of the Messianic tradition in light of the recent historic experiences. Well, if you know me, you know I looked up those words. Messianism. Why don't I read from this Wikipedia article for a moment? Messianism. In embryonic religions, Messianism is the belief and doctrine that is centered on the advent of the Messiah, who acts as the chosen Savior and leader of humanity by God. Messianism originated from the Hebrew Bible, Christian Old Testament, in which a Messiah is a Jewish monarch, like a king or something, or high priest traditionally anointed with holy anointing oil. The concept of Messianism has developed over time, with different interpretations of Scripture constituting different prophecies and portraits of the Messiah within Judaism and the Abrahamic religions. In Judaism, the Messiah will be a future king, Jewish king. The Messiah will be a future Jewish king from the line of David. And in Christianity and Islam, Jesus is the Messiah who is called the Christ, the Savior and Redeemer of the Jewish people and humanity. Other religions have Messianism-related concept, including the Buddhist Maitreya, the Hindu Kalki, Zoroastrianism Saiwachat, saying some of these names is weird, and he whom God shall make manifest in Buddhism. I just thought it might be worth it a moment to really look into this word Messiah, realizing that when I do go to friends' houses or out or talk to people, and I talk about any of this stuff I'm talking about, there are so many people who will go, Rick, that stuff's been proven false. There is no Jesus. There is no God. You don't have a soul. When you die, it's over with. So many people have been programmed that by the cartoon shows, by their schooling in the last 50, 60 years. They actually believe that stuff. Respectfully, some of those people send me comments, and I respect what other people believe. I think we're all spiritual beings in these biological bodies. So in that spiritual realm, I suspect there is a God or a hierarchy. And apparently even in the spiritual realm, there can be a revolution, and those people were cast out to where, I don't know. In the Bible it says down below. It said from below in this book here just a moment ago. But it just concerns me that people are buying the New Age propaganda, deception, beguilement, and are being led down the garden path by the Pied Piper right to their doom, it seems like. Hey, it's what it seems to me from my research, and I don't think too many people can say that I haven't read a couple books. I think I'm right that all of us are spiritual beings in these biological bodies. People have seen ghosts and spirits and had out-of-body experiences and after-death experiences, etc. In the 1840s to 1940s, a lot of people were doing seances and mediums, and we're talking to people from the beyond. I've got the books on that stuff. Tons of them I've been reading. The Facts of Psychic Science. This book is full of seances and what people said. I just reached over and pulled here's more. I got more. We're going to go over the stuff. I like reading that stuff a whole lot more than I like reading from this Encyclopaedia Judaica. But if we're going to get to the truth, you got to take the good with the bad. So back to this Wikipedia article. Judaism Messiah has several ways to pronounce it. The Anointed One is a term used in the Hebrew Bible to describe priests or kings who were traditionally anointed. For example, Cyrus the Great, king of Persia, is referred to as God's anointed Messiah in the Bible. So they want to say these humans are messiahs, but oddly enough, they rejected Jesus, who could heal people and cast out demons and spirits, when there was prophesied that a Messiah was coming back then. Some spiritual entity from the spiritual world was coming into our world, sent by God, whatever God is, whoever God is, to teach mankind. And what was he teaching? To treat each other how you want to be treated, to love one another, overturning the money changers' tables. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but that's a Messiah I can live with, who wants everybody to get along. So I'm going to believe in a Messiah. But apparently the Jewish people back then, the Pharisees, they had him crucified because they didn't like that teaching. They wanted to be the aristocrats. They wanted the structure of the pyramid with them at the top to continue. Their power structure was being threatened. In Jewish messianic tradition and religion, the term came to refer to the future King David, future Jewish king from the Davidic line, who will be anointed with holy anointing oil and rule the Jewish people during the Messianic age. In standard Hebrew, the Messiah is often referred to as, it's got these Jewish words here, in the Terrarian vocalized, pronounced, again, the anointed king. So to read a little more from this, you can go look it up on Wikipedia. It's 7 pages. I encourage anybody who wants to get to the nitty-gritty of this to do that. I'm trying to finish with this Encyclopaedia Judaica on Zionism. Traditional rabbinic teachings and current Orthodox thought has held that the Messiah will be an anointed one, Messiah descended from the father of the Davidic line of King David, King Solomon's temple, his son, who was into magic, Kabbalah, spiritualism, demon control. Just saying, that's the truth. Who will gather the Jews back into the land of Israel. Get it? 911? Gather the Jews back into the land of Israel. That's called the Aliyah. All the Jews are going home. They've been going home for 100 years. There has been disturbances caused in countries for the last 100 years to encourage them to leave. Anti-Semitism was stirred up intentionally by the very Jewish leaders who want the Jewish people to leave and go back to Israel. And of course they blame it on the rest of us, that we're anti-Semites. Most people, the United States, Europe, whatever communities, Germany, Poland, Ireland, North Carolina, where I live, just want to get along. I never wanted to take it upon myself to research this stuff. But when I could clearly see something was going on, and I went to Costa Rica when I was having a 0 birthday, and people told me that we Americans didn't understand world affairs and what was really going on. And I could see people were losing their homes and properties in Argentina, in Florida, in Canada, in California, in Germany. And as a businessman myself, I just couldn't believe, as my friends were continuing to tell me, that it's just that we have stupid managers and politically corrupt people in all powerful places. I didn't buy that. I said there's a plan. And I've discovered the plan. It's the New Age, the New World Order. Destruction of Christianity. In congressional hearings back in the 1920s, the communists exposed that they were planning on infiltrating all of our organizations, educational, medical, even the theater, the radio, the newspapers, buy them up. They were going to destroy the family values and Christian values and discredit Jesus. There was a plan. When I continue reading this and this other books I go over, in this Freemasonic and Satanism series, and apparently the Freemasons, not all the people at the lower levels, are recruited every day for training and money, but the people who prove to be, I suppose you could say, evil and aggressive, and who would go along, they get to rise up to the higher degrees of Freemasonry and other organizations, secret societies, and even the Illuminati. So they're traitors to humanity to join these people who want to be the aristocrats of the world. They're the traitors to the rest of us. And even in the Protocols of Zion, they laugh at these traitors, saying that they're even surprised that our own people would turn against us for money and power, and apparently sex. I know, I can go on. Go read the Protocols of Zion if you don't believe what I just said, and don't believe anything I say. Take notes like I do when I watch videos. And then go look up the stuff, and you have to reference certain books. Do like I do. Go buy the book, $3 or $4, and it shows up in the mail. Sit down and read it. I don't know how long it'll take you to figure it out, but you'll figure out what I figured out, because the truth is the truth. All right, a little more on this Wikipedia document. Orthodox Jewish Messianic movements have sprung out throughout the centuries among the Jewish communities. So this is an ongoing thing. Worldwide, including various Masonic Messiah claims, which at times become popular, but have either failed to deliver the promise of redemption or remained with only a handful of followers. The most popular Messianic claimants were Simon Bar Kokhba in the 2nd century, Judah Nemerith ben Hishel, 7th century, Sassiana Empire, Sabbatin Zevi, we made a video on his, in the 16th century, proclaimed himself Messiah in 1666, and came up with some anti-commandments, a parallel set of commandments that were opposite of the 10 Commandments, obviously satanic, evil. So you could kill and could steal and should do adultery, and he even married a prostitute. That's how seriously they take that redemption thing. Jacob Frank in the 18th century, during the 1700s. And Shirka Karel and Judah Shalom in the 19th century, the 1800s. Ottoman Yemen, and finally Mecham Mendel Shanir's son in the 20th century. And this ought to be concerning. A U.S. precursor to the Chabad Messianism, and apparently the dominant Jewish organizations worldwide today, C-H-A-B-A-D, Chabad, Messianism, and apparently a very powerful Jewish rabbinic organization in cahoots with many of our leading political organizations and other organizations worldwide. These people have some influence, and that's the last ongoing messianic rabbi that is supposed to have come and has lots of followers. Should be concerning, and apparently it's been in the press. I'm not making this up, you can look it up. I have already saved a copy of these press releases. But apparently these are the same people who are working with the current President of the United States and other people. So if you don't think that President Donald Trump was a selected, organized event to make him president, think again. We all wanted something to change. But so far, I'm skeptical. And luckily for me, in America, free speech is still part of the Constitution. And we can't have free speech, but eventually these elites, these kings, these leaders will make it punishable to say something truthful yet negative about them. People forget about how important it is to have freedom. Other denominations such as Reform Judaism perceive a Masonic age when the world will be at peace. Yeah, but they plan on depopulating the planet, eliminating the non-Jews. So maybe they will plan on being at peace with themselves, but do not agree that there will be a Messiah as a leader of this era. The Jewish Messiah concept was the source of the development of later similar Messianic concepts of Christianity, originally a Jewish sect, and Islam. So somebody makes a point here that Christianity, originally a Jewish sect. That's what it says here. So I can see that the Wikipedia article is tainted. It says it right here, Christianity, originally a Jewish sect. On the end of the thing it says Christianity, originally a Jewish sect. So if you pay attention to this material and look at it closely enough, you can see the deception. So let me read a little bit more from the Encyclopaedia Judaica on this conversation and wrap this video up, and we'll have another one, because as we know, there's 160 pages, and if each column's a page, there's 65 double column pages here. A lot of material. It's hard to fathom getting it all done, but I'm persistent and I usually get it all done. I still have to go back and continue on the Kabbalah and some of the other material in the Encyclopaedia Judaica I've been going over, and many other books, and make part 2s on these materials. It's just an ongoing thing, a conversation. The activities of Alakai and Kircher took place during the flourishing period of the Middle European liberalism. So here we have these people focused on liberalism, progressivism, and it seems to be the destruction of normalism. I made that up. Between the 1840 and 1875, they had European liberalism, when optimism about the possible integration of Jews into the life of European nations was almost universal. Certain obstacles to achieving full civil rights, as well as some signs of reservation and social rapprochement, were intercepted as residues of warning prejudices. Akaya and Kirchler were among the optimists. Until the 1870s, remember this is the Encyclopaedia Judaica, so when I'm reading this, remember they're painting themselves in a positive light. And of course, everybody but a non-Jew, everybody that is a non-Jew, would be prejudiced against Jews. It just goes without saying. I don't buy it. I don't hate Jews. I don't hate anybody. I don't hate Russians. I don't hate Chinese. I think we all should get along. Who said that? Until the 1870s, they never advanced the argument that Jews needed a country to secure their physical existence. Why did they need a country to secure their physical existence? I suppose the Arabs don't need a country to secure their existence. They've all been evacuated. Their cities have been bombed to smithereens. Small towns, big cities, sewer plants, water plants, bridges. In the middle of the night, they're shipping all these Arabs to the United States, Canada, Europe, all over. But apparently they don't need a physical existence because they don't count. Just me theorizing, rationalizing, thinking, reading what I'm saying here, and I'm thinking about all those Arabs that have been destroyed since 9/11, and they didn't have anything to do with 9/11, which was later to become one of the main planks of Zionism. So the main planks of Zionism back in the 1870s was to get a country of their own. Those poor Palestinian people never had a chance. And after 9/11, the Middle East Muslims, Arabs, whatever religion they were, Christian, atheist, Buddhist, Hindu, Islamic, they never had a chance. The planes were bombing relentlessly. For how many years now since 2001? This is 2017. 15, 16 years. Just saying. The same can be stated about the motives of the socialist Moses Hess. Hess was not an Orthodox Jew, but a social revolutionary and a philosopher with a Hegelian tinge. Okay, do we know what Hegelian means? To create two opposing forces. To have them kill each other while you watch. You don't have to fight your own battles. You just got to get other people to fight against each other. To instigate. And when you own all the newspapers and the media and the TV and the movies and control the education systems and everything else, you know, it's easy to get everybody riled up. Look at all the propaganda relentlessly about the Rainbow Coalition, the gay agenda, transgenderism, the bathroom issue, and so much more. It just goes on and on and on and on. And the people, they understand psychology. And usually the people surrender and give into it. I've got friends on the Democratic side, the left, who hate the right with a passion. I can't even talk to them. I've got friends on the right, Republicans, who hate the left. I can't talk to them. It's a sickness. They've been programmed. And if you try to cross that programming, this is how the brain works, the result is they get angry and vicious at you. When you go against anything anybody believes firmly, that they've been taught. It's part of the psychology teachings they've studied over the years. They know how to do that to us. His conversion to Jewish nationalism in 1860s can be understood as the result of the unmaterialized social revolution. Remember, in heaven apparently there was a revolution, and a third of the angels were cast out. And these revolutions never wind up good for the people, like in Egypt, Ukraine, France. The little people never gain anything. They were probably better off under the previous establishment. But the revolutionaries don't want you to know that. They want to destroy everything. And everybody gets free money, free food stamps, free money for rent. Nobody has to work. It's just going to appear out of thin air. The resources, the food, the cattle, the TVs, cars. And if you do get a job, join a union and you only have to work 2 or 3 hours for $50 an hour and rest the rest of the day. And economically, that's going to work, right? Not. They don't want you to know that. So there is this balance that I believe that, and luckily for me in my life when I was younger, in the United States anyways, that balance existed and I lived a fairly decent life. But those economic conditions are changing and have changed. That motivates me to make these videos because I would like people to have the opportunities I have. To pull over on the side of the road and walk into the woods and go hunting. To move from another state to another state, to go to college, pay for it yourself, and get a career. Buy a big sailboat. Go sail to the Bahamas like I did. Travel to Costa Rica, Cozumel, Canada, Maine, Santa Fe, Arizona, Texas, and so many places in between. Have a good life. And I don't think they want that. Now they teach us global warming, global cooling, climate change, biodiversity, sustainability, terrorism, plagues, economic destruction. The United States owes, what they say, 30 trillion, and mountain growing of debt will never can pay. Every child born owes $1 million the day that it's born. That's not freedom. I think all this craziness is artificially created, and they want people to believe it, and they want to cause a Hunger Game type of society, and they want to kill off a huge portion of the population. And they have taken over the Palestinians' land, these Zionist Jewish people, these Illuminati world leaders, as PhD Henry McCall, author in Canada, wrote, Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. Or Rabbi Marvin Anthelman, to eliminate the opaque, yours and my belief in God. They don't want people to pray. They don't want people to believe. They're afraid of God. There's even been alien abductions by these little grays, and people called out in Jesus' name, and the gray alien dropped them like a hot potato. And they woke up back in their bed. So what is it with this alien thing? This seemingly spiritual, demonic interaction with our world? Are there forces controlling these beings? Are they cloning or genetically engineering a hybrid race? What evil plan do they have? Do people know what's written in prophecy about these things? I've got books on these topics. I'm going to continue reading them and making videos. So maybe we can figure it out. Anyways, this Hess guy in this Encyclopaedia Judaica based his Zionist ideas on the concept of a national spirit which permeated the life of the Jewish people. So again, I keep saying they want the Jewish people to be nationalistic no matter where they live in the world. Their nation is Israel. They're nationalistic. They put Israel first, no matter where they live in the world. But the rest of us tear down that fence, Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, because we're globalists. The people are actually buying the propaganda, the deception, the path to destruction, enslavement. I don't think the Mexicans should be forced out of Mexico. I think that government should get the politicians and people should be removed, and people run that country like we do here in the United States, or did, because that's a beautiful country. Lots of mountains and waterfront and all that. It's an awesome place. Costa Rica's an awesome place. I suspect all around South America, Central America, everywhere you go is probably pretty awesome if it weren't for the forces that were controlling those countries. Who are those people? Since the dispersions, and when all the Jews were dispersed from the land of Canaan called Palestine, it's a couple thousand years ago, since the dispersion, the Spirit was embodied in the Jewish religious institutions. But as the institutions were rapidly disintegrating, the gradual disappearance of the Jewish spirit was the most probable and the most lamentable prospect. So when people lost their spirit for Judaism and their culture, the leaders found it most lamentable prospect. So they had to do things, cause things to happen to inspire the Jewish people into their motivated Zionism aspirations. And they did a lot of horrific things in countries all over the world to create anti-Semitism on purpose. They wanted the people to be agitated and to rile up against the Jews and make the Jews feel uncomfortable, so they would join these movements, all their wealth and family, and move to Israel. They were building a nation for a purpose. And it does seem to be a very evil purpose. In order to rescue this spirit, the only solution was the reconstitution of national life in the ancient homeland. So what's all this have to do with the Anunnaki and the Egyptian hieroglyphics? Even when they invaded Iraq, there was a lot of documentation that there were planned events, scientists and troops that invaded museums and all the other historic sites to gather up artifacts. Somebody's looking for something. This is about the ancient times and artifacts. There is a plan here. Hess's argument is phrased in terms of social philosophy. While the emotional climate was provided by resentment against the non-Jewish society, which had frustrated the Jews' expectations of being treated as equals. So let's blame everybody else and not the Jews. In any event, any diagnosis excluding emancipation as a possible solution to the Jewish problem. It clearly says here is a Jewish problem. I'll show you the book. I'm just saying it's everybody else's fault, right? It says Jewish problem right there. It would have been right next to my finger if you go back and pause it. Is absent from the theory of Hess, as is absent from those of Alkali and Kirchner. More obvious than in the theories of Alkali and Kirchner is Hess's independence on the general trend of nationalism in Europe. The use of such terms as nationalism, national renaissance, creative genius of the nation indicate the source of influence, i.e. Romanticism, which provided all the national movements with their respective ideological tools. Hess's Rome and Jerusalem, as its title indicates, was written under the impact of events which had led to the unification of Italy in 1859. Hess especially refers to this fact, calling the Jewish cause the last national problem after Italy had solved its own. So I don't think, in my opinion, the division of Italy and its reunion, or the division of Germany and its reunion, or even the Civil War in the United States where outside forces wanted to divide our country, I don't think that is the same religious implications as all the Jews moving from countries all over the world and taking the Palestinians' land and creating the State of Israel. I don't see how you can compare the two. And many Jewish people were happy where they moved to in Germany or the U.S. or any part of the world. But I expect anybody who did continue the witchcraft activities of Kabbalistic studies and practices, like a magician or a witch or something, I suspect they would have difficulties if people were involved in these activities for unscrupulous purposes, selfish, evil purposes. I'm not necessarily against natural magic, quantum physics, and all that other stuff, but I am against, even with the U.S. government, whoever runs the U.S. government, and other leaders of the world, who apparently, according to many other investigators, researchers, authors, They have technologies that are 100 years in advance of what we have today, and they're withholding it from we the people. I'm against that. I'm against putting fluoride in the water, in the toothpaste, where it says, do not swallow, danger. Sky spraying chemicals in the sky, basically aluminum products. Aluminum in children's cereals and foods. We don't know what they put in there, and it is the Illuminati, Fritz Springmeier's bloodlines of the Illuminati families who own the major food companies. They can put anything in our food anytime they want, just like they're doing with the GMOs, genetically modified foods, which are banned in many countries all over the world, but not here in the United States. Aspartame is banned in many countries in the world, but not here in the United States. Fluoride in the water is banned in many countries around the world, but not here in the United States. Why is that? Certain vaccines are banned in the world, but not here in the United States. The people in the United States need to wake up. That's my position. If it's not good for insects, pesticides and herbicides, and plants, and it's going to be in and on our food, I don't think it'll be good for us. If it'll kill a bug, I suspect it'll harm us. If it'll kill plants, I'm not sure I want to eat that plant. That food with that pesticide on it, herbicide. Alright, I'm going to read a little bit more here and end this video. I thank you for watching my video and listening to me, and I'm only trying to create a conversation. Jews who are the descendants of a holy and ancient nation should not lag behind the newly created nations of the Balkans. See, they're trying to rationalize this. We can kill all the Arabs in 20 different countries, all over North Africa, the Middle East. It's okay. I don't think so. The real difference between Alkali and Kaushner, I'm not saying these names right, on the one hand and Hess on the other, is the spiritual background from which their respective drives stem. While the first two were originally steeped in the sources of Jewish tradition, including the Bible, the Talmud, and the Kabbalah. Here we go with the Kabbalah. The last had only a faint idea of these sources from his childhood. So you have these leaders driving forward Zionism worldwide. For a couple hundred years, world wars were caused. 9/11 was caused. Destruction of many countries in the Middle East occurred to have this all come about. So I think I'll stop reading here. I'm getting worn out from speaking. Rick Miracle reporting.